All right. Welcome to the Unfazed, Unedited podcast, where we provide commentary on complicated topics in an uncomplicated format. I'm Dr. Shaunna Payne Gold, and I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And of course, I'm with Dr. Lisa, and Dr. Lisa had a new idea for this week, so we're going to run with it, right?
Well, yes, many of you may know that the fabulous Dr. Gold is celebrating 10 years as a solopreneur, and so I thought it would be a nice idea to put her in the hot seat and for me to ask some
Harry.
questions about her journey. And as an opportunity to reflect, but also to think about the future, and also to provide some tips to aspiring
Mhm.
solopreneurs or just entrepreneurs in general. So that is the plan. So it's a little different. Um, no word of the week and just the one phase, but next week is
Mhm.
National Small Business Week. And I guess this week has been going on for 60 years, Shauna. Did you know that?
I did not know that. That's a long time. That's a
Mm-hmm.
long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So give your small business friends some love. Um, Go
That's
buy
right.
from their stores or their products or take a training with them, whatever it is that they do. You should do that always,
Mhm.
but especially next week since it's National Small Business Week and we want to celebrate their hard work and the contribution. So, in that spirit, we are going to jump
Mhm.
into a little interview here. And this has not been prepped. I wrote the questions and Shauna has just looked at them. So, we're going to get
Yes, we're just going to
off
run
the
with it.
cuff, totally unprepared questions in our unfazed, unedited style. So,
That's right. That's right.
all right. Okay. So, Shauna, are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
All
And if I
right.
don't know the answers, I will certainly let you know that, Lisa. You
Yeah.
know this already.
I know. I know.
Not
All
sure.
right. Okay. So, it's 10 years this year. So
Mhm.
I was wondering if you could share with me and the listeners what made you do this? What made you jump feet first into entrepreneurship and branch out on your own?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I certainly I would say I went feet first, but I did not go into the deep end at first.
Okay.
Like tipped slowly from the beach right into entrepreneurship. And part of it was kind of out of a pragmatic perspective. I was still working in a university environment, and there was an organization that wanted me to come in and do training, which was exactly what I was doing in my
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day work, but they wanted me to come in and do a training very similar. And frankly, I just didn't have anywhere for the money to go because the money wasn't being written to the university. The money wasn't really
Mm-hmm.
being written to me. It needed to be kind of allocated in a way that it went towards what I do, not
Mm-hmm.
my person. And so I said, okay, well, I got to figure this out. Okay, let me go figure out a business name and figure out how to even get a business name and a business license in the state of Maryland and all the things just to get a bank account. And so with that wasn't like a whole, well-oiled machine that was thought out and ran with. It was just, I have a bank account now. So whenever I do these one-off random ass trainings, I have somewhere to put the money. And that was it. And when I found out that, oh, no, Shaunna, you can't just roll up to the bank and tell them that you want to establish a bank account with this name on it, you need articles of incorporation. You need all these other things that go along with that to open up the account in
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
business name that I did not have. And so when people talk about building the plane as they fly, I
Mm-hmm.
was doing that from jump, like from the beginning, just for this little small training. And I'm glad I did it because after that, I had to get a little more intentional about it. But that's how I kind of walked from the shallow and tentatively walking from the shallow. There was no real plan, no strategy whatsoever.
Okay, so it was a practical logistical thing initially, but you were still
Yeah.
working full time at that point. So at some
Mm-hmm.
point then you decided to quit the security of a full-time salaried position at a
Mm-hmm.
university and go
Mm-hmm.
100% consulting. So what tipped you over that edge?
Yeah, well, many things, but I think one of the biggest things was I was in the dream job with the dream bosses,
Mhm.
with the salary that I wanted, uh, at the pinnacle of what I do in higher
Mm-hmm.
ed.
Mm-hmm.
And I still looked around and said, oh my God, what I do in any other industry would command three, four, five times as much.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't have the security, obviously, but it would
Mm-hmm.
command more and it would create freedom for me in a lot of different ways when it came to being very flexible. Because as you probably remember, Lisa, my last higher ed job was a 50 plus mile commute from my
Yeah.
home to that university and back every day. That was not exactly what I wanted because the previous university that I worked at, I wanted to stay there. But even with what at the time, I think we had like 17 different diversity offices, I had been interviewing for years. I had been, applying for years to stay on campus in a different capacity and was still stuck in a particular role. And so at some point, it was like, okay, if I can't
Yeah.
move up here, I have to move out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of made a deal with myself that, okay, I'm going to give this last job with the long commute 5 years, and then I'm wrapping this up. I'm not doing this anymore, but I'll give it 5 years. And then year two, what happens? A global pandemic.
Oh my gosh.
Hello, that
Yep.
changes
Yeah.
your perspective of
Mm-hmm.
everything. And even as we were trying to return back to the office slowly but surely, a couple days a week, it still ended up being the job ended up being the hub of like every problem I had going on in my world. Like
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about childcare and daycare ad
Yep.
nauseum on this podcast. There's even if you live across the street from the freaking school, the school schedules don't work for normal schedules. And then
Right.
add a commute on top of that, and that does not work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there would be times where I would literally drive from my house to the city of the university at 4 in the morning to get a workout in so that I could be at work on time and get out on time, and still burning the candle at both ends in regard
Yeah.
to being able to see the boys. And so it just, as I did this assessment, I'm like, no, the inflexibility of this job, even comparatively being more flexible than other jobs, still did not work for me. It
Mm-hmm.
just did not work. And so eventually it was getting very frustrating. Um, I applied for even a disability waiver to work more days from home and have 1 day commute, which I did not get, even though I had all the documentation for it. Like all
Mm.
these barriers that I ran into that were saying, okay, fortunately, I had built up enough of a clientele where the money kind of replaced itself. But at the same time, there were so many signs that it's like, okay, it's time. It's time.
Mm-hmm.
It's time. It's the full time job was causing more problems and headaches than not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when you have to start weighing the pros
Yeah.
and cons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what other big concerns or fears or worries did you have in the kind of weeks running up to you handing in your resignation and taking the jump? So, obviously, healthcare,
Yes.
financial stuff, but thinking more kind of abstractly, what else was going on for you that you were concerned about that made
Mm,
the jump a little nervous?
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, it was, at that time, I had plenty of enough contracts and work and all that to replace the money that I was making in that full time position. I think the fear for me was, okay, clearly other people have done this before. So it's not that it can't work. It's a matter of what do I not know in order to make things
Right.
run themselves without me having to babysit it. Like
Mm-hmm.
work should not stop just because, God forbid, I have a head cold, or, if I need to step away for a week for my parents, the whole show should not shut down because I'm not
Right. Right.
moving things along. And so for me, it was kind of the how do I set up systems in such a way that I don't become my own toxic boss, overworking myself in ways that don't allow
Mm-hmm.
me the freedom that I'm looking for. Right. Like that was the whole point of leaving a university environment, was to have
Yes.
flexibility. Well, what happens when you don't set up your business in such a way that you still don't have flexibility? You're just being your own toxic boss. Didn't want that either. So that was a major concern. Um, And then just in general, it's like, okay, so somebody is a professional with all the tax law stuff, everything changing over time. Of course, then we had an election that was happening when Biden was elected. You know, there was just a number of things happening in the world at the time that could directly affect the work that we do. And so just thinking about all of that swirling around, like
Mm-hmm.
somebody told me that entrepreneurs are either exiting a storm, in a storm, or approaching a storm at all times.
Okay.
And I wasn't in a storm at the time, but I was strategic enough to think about, okay, how will this work if and when storms come?
Mm-hmm.
Lo and behold, we have a whole ass storm in the White House right now. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thankful to be adequately, relatively prepared for that, but who can really be completely prepared for that? But thinking about the possibility of that happening
Mm-hmm.
in such a way that it directly affects your livelihood.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, so that I'll stop there. But yeah, those were the things that were swirling around for
Mm-hmm.
me. And I think it's kind of the, oh, what is it? Ignorance is bliss type thing. Like,
It is.
yeah, had I not been thinking about any of that, it would have been, oh, this is great. This is wonderful. If you're even semi conscious in this country running a business, you should have some fear. I mean, it's part and parcel with it. You have to be built for it because it's going to be there regardless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I definitely have spoken with other women in particular, entrepreneurs who have run their own business,
Mm-hmm.
who have said, I did this so that I could spend more time with my kids or spend more time with doing this, that, and the other. And then they're like, I've never worked so hard in my life, right? So I'm working
Oh
120
God,
hours a week, and
yes.
so that didn't work out. So how has that
Mm-hmm.
transition been for you with you going into this role, knowing that part of the one of the big reasons was flexibility that
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
university wasn't offering you, but then this fear or concern that this is your business, your baby, and so you're gonna be
Mm-hmm.
driven to maybe work more hours and then be your own toxic boss. So did that
Mm-hmm.
happen? And if it did, how did you
Mm-hmm.
resolve it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of like when I started my doc program, Lisa, and they gave us this list, like this top 10 things to control or make sure doesn't happen so that you get through this program effectively. So nobody die, nobody lose a job, nobody move, like all these ridiculous things that of course happen when life happens. And that's kind of how I felt things they unfolded for me in that way too, because the whole world was going through a global pandemic at the time. On top of that, the boys were not just, oh, let's just be at home and chill. They were homeschooling. And so I needed flexibility for that. Um, for example, anybody that's going through any type of separation or divorce, all that was going on for me at the same time. And so the overworking in the business at that time was actually like a respite. It's like, okay,
Mm,
I get to escape and think about these things for a
yeah,
while because I don't have to think about putting on a freaking hazmat suit to go get, groceries tomorrow because that was
right.
the reality we were in at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually it was still a good thing because yes, you're going to work hard. I mean, you're exactly right. You're going to work your butt off. You're going to work, random ass days of the week, random ass times in those days during the week. There's been times where I knew that the boys had things going on. And so I would pull literally 12 to 14-hour days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because I knew I needed Thursday, Friday, Saturday to do things with them. But at least I had that flexibility versus not only not having flexibility, but also still missing out the time on them with what they're doing and what family needs were coming up. So if I'm going to work like a dog, I want to work like a dog for myself and not for someone else, because at least I can say, yes, I'm going
Yeah.
to work from 6 to 6 because that works for me, not because someone told me to, and I still have to miss out on family obligations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's almost a pick your poison moment, but at the same time, I will say that it's especially when you run your own business, there's lots of stuff that you don't like doing, but there's a ton of stuff you love doing. Like it's your passion. It's if you were, independently wealthy and did not have to work for money, these would be the things you would do anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's where your sweet spot is. And so I try to stay there as much as possible,
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
it's hard. Like, you gotta, write the 25-page proposal in order to get the chance to do a keynote for somebody for 2 hours. That's how it works. That's how it
Mm-hmm.
works. Yeah.
So you mentioned this a couple of questions ago around kind of the pandemic and the 2020
Mm-hmm.
election, and then obviously the current political climate. So I'm wondering if you could kind of zoom out and share with us how you see your work having changed over the last 10 years. And obviously, diversity, equity, and inclusion is
Mm-hmm.
central to the work that you do, but not just that,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of more, now that you can look back on that decade, how have things
Mm-hmm.
changed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think the things that have changed the most is that people are, I'm going to use woke because that's a word that we love around here. But people are waking up to both the good and the bad in everyone around them. And so it's
Yeah.
no longer veiled. It's no longer, I kind of thought they were a really nice neighbor. They speak to me every morning. They make sure that the kids get something on Halloween. So they're a really nice family. And then, you see somebody get out of their car with a MAGA hat on in front of that very same house. And you're like, hold up. It's this awakening of who are people really on a deeper level that now we can't ignore. And so that kind of trickles down into everything. It trickles down from your personal life into your professional life into your business life. Is who are people really? And I think what's that saying? Smooth water never created a skilled sailor type of thing. It's like
Mm.
we are in a situation that is very tumultuous, and so now
Mm-hmm.
we're becoming more and more skilled at seeing people for who they really are and then using that information to navigate accordingly. That comes with your next door neighbor, that comes with a coworker, that comes with somebody you do business with. You get to see who people really are when it comes to their values rather than just their behavior around you. And that's been, in my opinion, refreshing because we've talked about this a lot, Lisa, around um, whether it's overt racism or covert racism, overt phobias, covert phobias. And most of what I'm seeing now is extremely overt, both good and bad, which gives me more information on how I want to navigate the world as a person, as a professional, as a parent, as a business owner. And so I get to decide, no, I don't want to do work with you. That money looks real nice, but I don't want to do work with you because I've seen how you've acted towards certain groups or how you've disengaged with certain folks or how you made us think about XYZ month celebration in your organization not coming to work. And furthermore, not only am I not coming to work with you, I don't want my business values being affiliated with your business values based on what I know. And I get to make those
Mm-hmm.
choices with my eyes wide open with much more information if we than if we had smooth seas right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of exposure, a lot of exposure of people.
Do you
Yeah.
think then that you have become more selective over the last 10 years with who you're willing to have as a client based on this emergence of clear value differentiation?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean the amount of work that I've said no to because and let's be clear. Let me zoom back out a little bit. In the United States of America, it I would suggest it's damn near impossible to find a business or money that is completely clean. Let me
Right.
just say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even with that, if you're looking for the cleaner money and the cleaner clients, you still have to be aware of a bit of their history, who they've affiliated with, who they have not. And so, with that, yes, I've turned down quite a few folks to say, I'm not interested. And not only am I not interested, not that I'm saying this to their face, I'm telling them, no, thank you, I'm not interested, but I'm also not referring them in ways that I would with other organizations where I may not have capacity. And I would say, oh, you need someone to do this? I'm unavailable, but
Okay.
Dr. Ingerfield would be lovely to
Right.
fill this role. No, if I see the values are off, that means they're probably going to be off for the people that I work with and surround myself with. And
Mm-hmm.
so not only am I going to say no, but I'm going to say no, and it's a period at the end of the sentence without a warm referral as well. I think that's very important too. So yeah, I've said no quite a bit, quite a bit.
So, um, given your reflections on the last 10 years and how you've really kind of narrowed your value set in terms of, well, not narrowed, clarified your value set in terms of
Mm-hmm.
who you're willing to work with and the joy that that brings you. If you could get in a time machine and travel back to 2016 to Shaunna that was on the precipice of starting her own business and jumping into this full time, what would you say to her? What advice would you
Mm-hmm.
give?
That's a great question. I would probably say that yes, you can do it, definitely. Surround yourself with people that are maybe 5 steps ahead of you in this work. Um, I was, frankly, I could not think of really anybody that I knew. Let me take that back. There were some people that I knew that had their own consultancies. I made an assumption, and we know what assumptions are, y'all. I made assumptions that they were further along in their entrepreneurship
Oh,
than they
okay.
actually were. And so, questions that I had about entrepreneurship, they could not answer. And that's when I realized that, oh, I've been kind of tracking. I think I passed some people, and I didn't know I passed some people in my business knowledge. And that's not a slight against them. It's just that their priorities were going in a different place. They Some of them were still in academia, or some of them were still working other 9 to 5 jobs, and so it wasn't a situation where they could just immerse themselves into their business. And so that's one thing that I tell people all the time is don't assume that you're far behind anyone. And in fact, if you're looking for an entrepreneur that knows everything, then you're not going to find them, because most days are finding solutions to questions and problems that you have every day. It's rarely a day that you wake up as an entrepreneur and you're like, okay, I got this, and this done. It's like, no, I got these 3 headaches that I
Yeah.
need to fix.
Mm-hmm.
Who do I talk to figure this out? And that's okay. So that's what I would tell myself, is just to not be as intimidated as I was, because I still did
Mm-hmm.
it, but I was very intimidated by it and made the assumption that I was way, 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 way in the back of the
Mm-hmm.
pack. When in fact, I just needed to be in a different circle with people that knew more and had experienced more so that I could ask the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Would
once
you?
you run that, once you run through your list of, maybe you have a short list of people that run a business, and you have, a big problem, or, something that you just haven't figured out yet. And you run through your whole damn list asking them the question and none of them have the answer. That's your first sign that you need to move rooms, because you need expertise that they don't have. No offense, but they don't have that expertise. So
Mm-hmm.
now it's time to go to another room that has different expertise. And that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. If
Yeah.
not, you'll just remain stuck.
So, some strategies around technical competence and thinking about the
Mm-hmm.
logistics of running a business. What about, what would you say to yourself, or would you even disclose
Mm-hmm.
to your former self the social, political, cultural, economic landscape ups and downs that we've had in terms of helping you then kind of
Mm-hmm.
plan for these eventualities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, see, Lisa, that's not even fair, because we know that they've been calling it unprecedented for how many years now?
Right,
Like, all
right.
of it is stinking unprecedented. Um, what I probably would tell myself or do differently or think differently about is, I think really prudent business owners continue to invest back in their business. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying huge things, but small things, even like, okay, we made this much money. I want to buy a new mic for the podcast. Or we did this. I want to do this for the business, what have you.
Yeah.
Um, I think that there's some investment strategies that still need to happen to let your money grow in that way as well. That doesn't have to be babysat, and it's not something that requires a bunch of sweat equity. Because I've seen business owners that kind of figure out their portfolio. They have their their active income, and then they have their passive income. And I have lots of active, or at least I did 10 years ago. I was starting to have more and more active income, and I should have had more passive income to prepare for this
Okay.
time period.
Uh-huh.
That's what I would do differently. And that's what I am doing differently moving forward is how do you put that in a place where this is something that may take me, Lisa, it may take you 5 years to write a book on your favorite topic, but it's going to pay you for 25 years after that
Mm-hmm.
because you invested the time and the energy and paying an editor or whoever does that stuff, that kind of stuff. That's what I wish I had done more of. What were the longer term wins rather than the shorter term wins? So that's what I
Yeah.
try to focus on.
Yeah, you've always talked to me about um, the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, and some months, you have a lower income, and other months you have tons,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
over the course of 12 months, that balances out. But
That's right.
the fear or the worry that takes over a little bit in those troughs is what I hear you saying is that if you had, because the troughs can be a month or they could be like 8 months given that landscape, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's right.
And so thinking ahead to manage
Mm-hmm.
the inevitability of some of these troughs so that you're not nervous or as stressed during them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so true. So true. No, you're exactly right because when and you know this, Lisa, when this was pre 47 election, in
Mm-hmm.
our line of work, things started to constrict because people were
Yeah.
scared and they didn't want to start things that they would probably have to stop, and all these other dynamics that were going on with the anticipation that he might win, and he did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that preemptive fear caused a lot of money to restrict. Fortunately, I had kind of, put money aside for a rainy day that lasted for about 18 months. But then what happens after that 18 months?
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I was telling a friend of mine this the other day, I said, oh, no, no, no. This is not a situation where entrepreneurs were wholesale unprepared for the trough. It was the trough was deeper, longer, and more substantial than what they planned for. And so with that, it took a lot of people saying, oh my God, I need to pivot. I need to do this a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Um, for my business and things that I did, people will see even as they go, look at anything that I put out there, social media or otherwise. We knew that there was going to be some pivoting
Mm-hmm.
based on everyone's fear and vitriol around diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Well, I'd always been doing strategic planning work as a part of the overall suite of DEI for organizations. So it
Yeah.
ended up having to be kind of a switcheroo where, you know, how do you switch it in such a way that the language doesn't get you kicked out of the room before you can even get started, but you're still doing the same work and using the same skill
Mm-hmm.
sets. It's kind of like when like breweries and whatnot, they started switching into creating antibacterial, like during the pandemic period. They had the same equipment, but they had to use it in a different way based on the demand. And that's exactly what I did, what a lot of other people did, where they had to kind of their switch the language that describes what they did. So previously, I might have said, yes, we do diversity, equity, and inclusion, organizational development. And yes, there's a piece of that strategic planning work in order to make it actionable. Now
Right.
we have to lead with, we do tons of strategic planning work, and we can't help but do it with an equity and
Mm-hmm.
inclusion lens. And that becomes more palatable for folks that still want to continue with the work. They are just as well versed in the socio-political climate as we are, but they don't want to shut everything down based off of 3 words. I think that's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah. Yeah. So given, your expertise in the area of organizational diversity, equity, and inclusion and strategic planning and where those two
Mm-hmm.
meet or diverge,
Mm-hmm.
where do you think the field is heading for consulting? So for people like you and me in the next 10 years, do you think
Mm-hmm.
this storm will be weathered? Do you think it will be changed forever? Like, what are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think the storm is gonna be weathered. I'm sure of that because we do have a history of that. I think I was listening to this podcast by Donnie Wiggins. She also does entrepreneurship work and coaching. And she talked specifically about how a lot of entrepreneurs in various waves of their business were not pissed off because they couldn't do the work or they didn't get selected to do the work. Much of it was they were angry because they weren't prepared for the upswing during the
Okay.
downswing, right?
Right.
And so when I listened to that, and she had this fantastic podcast, I mean, I made like 10 pages of notes of stuff to do and all this other stuff. But basically, the gist was yes, there are going to be quieter times in your business for whatever reasons. It'll be quieter. Maybe it's by choice, maybe it's not by choice, what have you. What can be put in place during those times to prepare you for the upswings? So
Right.
given that we've got 10 years, I think a few things are going to happen. One, for our field, I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be a huge pendulum swing course correction from everything that's happened.
Okay.
So for example, people know that DEI programs have been shut down. People with DEI in their title don't work there anymore. I think there's going to be this huge swing to put all of that stuff back in place and more. And so being prepared for that. Second thing I would say is being prepared for that in an AI environment is going to be huge.
Yeah.
And so with that, again, I keep telling you, Lisa, I keep falling into AI environments that just require me to learn and figure it out. And so with that, what's good for consulting now in 10 years is that AI is the both and of our work. It can help us with the content of our work, but it also can help us with the business of our work.
Right.
So if I need, a draft of a policy on XYZ, I can put in my parameters into AI. They'll spit something out, which I know will be 40% garbage, but at least I'm not looking at a blank page, and then I can
Right.
draft it and move forward. Or I can link my email to whatever and say, hey, based off of the trend of the last year, look at my calendar and give me the best entrepreneur calendar based on what I do the most work with. And it'll spit out a calendar. I'll make adjustments, so forth. If we don't do that, I don't think AI is going to replace us ever.
Okay.
But I do think that the ways in which we do things will be replaced. So they're not going to be like, hey, Lisa, draft a policy from scratch. They're going to say, hey, I already put some inputs into AI about some of the best policies for this. You have the expertise and the human touch. Can you look at what I pulled up and draft something great for us? Right?
Yeah.
Not replacing us, but it now needs to become its own business partner, really, when you come down to it. Now, figuring out what role you want them to have is a different matter. I have some friends who have literally trained their select AI tool of choice to be their executive assistant or to be their social media manager or to be whatever they need it to be based on the prompts that they've kind of fed it over time. If folks don't know how to start to do that, we're going to be left behind because you won't be, the other person will be hired not because they're smarter or better than you at the work. It's because they can do it more efficiently with a smaller budget and a shorter timeline.
Right. Right.
That's what I think is going to happen. So anyway, that's the futuristic answer for 10 years, I think is going to happen. So, yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things I wanted to hear from you is what your biggest learning has been over the last 10 years. And we've talked a lot about AI and whether we should get on the boat or not, right? So, given what you just said, I imagine the emergence of AI and how to use it effectively without replacing yourself is one of those learnings. And that's accelerated in the last 3 to 4 years, right? That wasn't really a big thing when you started out in 2016, 2017.
Exactly.
So what other big key learnings have you had over the last decade doing this work?
Yeah, yeah. I think the biggest thing is not to take pride in on several layers, not to take pride in the American hustle culture. Don't take pride in the business hustle culture. Don't take pride in the solo entrepreneur hustle culture. Don't do it. And the reason why I say that is just because, again, one of my mentees that was a student of mine many years ago, she started her own consultancy as well. And the most powerful thing that I heard her say that I applied to my work was, I do not want to become my own toxic boss, the very toxicity that I just left in my 9 to 5.
Right.
If we're trying to escape that type of toxicity, we have to create systems that run themselves,
Mm-hmm.
so that we're not babysitting systems, or we're not having to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to run XYZ because it's already automated or delegated. However, that to me is the biggest learning, because it ends up being a vicious cycle. You're just now instead of being an employee for somebody else, you're your own employee. And that's exactly what we try to get away from, working for someone else. I would prefer my business to work for me,
Yeah.
and still figuring that out. Let me just say, it's not all smooth. I'm just saying that it's at the top of my mind when I think about new things that I want to explore. It's, how do I systematize things in ways that I don't have to babysit it, and I can live my life a bit more flexibly. So yeah, no toxic bosses.
Okay. Last question. So, given everything that you've shared, um, what advice would you offer to women specifically? I mean, this is going to be broadly applicable, but we have a focus on, obviously, on women and other
That's right.
marginalized groups. So, someone who is looking right now to maybe launch their own consulting, maybe it's in DEI and strategic planning, maybe it's not, but it's
Mm-hmm.
2026, right? We're in the
Mm-hmm.
landscape that we are in. What
Mm-hmm.
is your advice for those folks?
Yeah, yeah. I remember this was probably last year sometime. I said flat out, don't do it last year sometime.
Really?
I flat out said,
Oh
don't
my.
start it. But now I gave caveats, though. I gave caveats.
Okay,
And
okay.
here's my caveats. Let me say this. And I'm not saying it for shock value. I'm just saying it as in, unfortunately, the majority of folks that speak to entrepreneurship make this grand assumption that everybody can just quit their job tomorrow and start a consultancy. As y'all can tell by my story, it was not that way. I was, let's see, 2016 is when I started my business. I didn't leave higher ed until around about 2020. So that was 4 years of side hustle, building things out, so forth, before I left my full time. And I probably could have stayed at my full time a couple more years, even just to be even more comfortable. So with that, what I'm saying is, don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe of your business is not legit unless you jump out 100%
Oh
full time
yeah,
from the
great.
gate.
Yeah.
No, I would not advise that. And I would not advise that with people who have more and more and more folks that are dependent upon you. Caregiving is a very real area of the scholarship right now. If you are a caregiver in any way, do not rush to leave your 9 to 5. You can start your business on the side and continue to on ramp it, but you don't need to make this clean break of, bye y'all, to start my business. That is not wise, in my opinion. But then the other thing I would say too, for folks to, especially women, to think about, is constantly looking for the business strategies that set up your loved ones, your family, if you still have parents that are living, siblings, setting those folks up for success through those methods. So let me give you a
Mm-hmm.
great example of this, Lisa. So I think it might have been Beyonce or somebody else, where people kept saying, oh, they have their kid like in the last 5 seconds of every song on their album. It's so cute, but why do they keep doing that? Hello, because they can hire their freaking kid as an employee of the company, pay them, put money in their 401k or whatever they want to put it in, and they are now receiving tax-free money from the business just from giggling on your track. Blue Ivy was in Beyonce's tour the other summer. Hello, that money, she's an employee of the tour, which means she gets paid a certain amount of money, so on and so forth. So these types of little things that people need to think about, especially women need to think about as they're building, so that it's not just a, money for time business, but you're
Mm-hmm.
literally building a system that works for you and your loved ones and your dependents. I have a friend that doesn't have any children, but she has a niece. And she set things up for her so that she doesn't have to think about college and debt and all these other things. Um, so those would be the things I would think about there. And the last thing I would say is I've noticed a trap that some people fall in where, oh, I'm building this business to hand over to my kids. No, please don't do that. Okay. Let kids figure out
Mm,
what the hell they want to
yeah.
do. Just because you make pizzas, that does not mean that your kid wants to be stuck running your pizza restaurant. Okay. Set them up. Now, if you want to set them up financially and then you can sell it off and they can do what they want to do with their business, that's fine. But we make these preconceived notions that, oh, I'm starting my business for my kids to hand it off to them. Are you handing off the fiscal responsibilities and headache of a job that they don't want to do? Or are you setting them up with a trust and some other things financially so that they can then do what they want to do? So if I'm, tossing pizzas as my business and my kids do not want to toss pizzas, can I sell my pizza business so that then they can start their own business making snow cones? But don't make the assumption that they're going to want to do what you want to do. Yes, do it for yourself and those that depend upon you, but don't pigeonhole them into work because that just sounds like a whole bunch of resentment to me. When you were trying to support them, make sure the future is a bit more solid for them, you
Mm,
just gave them a headache that they didn't want.
yeah, that's such an interesting perspective. I like that, right? Because you often think about how businesses get passed down,
Yeah, yeah.
little ones and big ones, but whether or not the relative
Mhm.
wants it sometimes
Yeah,
isn't factored in there. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Like when I see the law firms that have like Allen, 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 and Allen, it's like, okay, was that my choice?
right.
Or did, a grandkid get suckered into, going to law school? I mean, what happened here? And I know that there are some people that genuinely want to do similar work, but it just creates kind of heartbreak too, because it's like, oh my God, I spent 30 years building this company and you don't want it. You made the assumption your kid or your grandkid
Right,
or your niece,
right.
nephew wanted it. And now feel some kind of way about it. And I guess like to put the period on the end of that thought too, which I didn't do until more recently, plan with the end in mind, meaning
Mm,
that, yeah, maybe you do want to pass it on to a family member or what have you, but you also want the option of what if you want to sell it when you're done? What does that
yep,
look like to make sure it's
yep.
valuable? And so and I did not do that. I was thinking the very same thing many other people were thinking was, oh, I'm just going to pass it on or just shut it down and it's fine. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what if someone wants to buy that intellectual property and that in and of itself sets your family up for more than one generation of comfort when it comes to your work. So that would be the other thing I would think about too. But your kid don't want to be throwing pizzas because you want to throw pizzas. Stop it. Stop it. Um, yeah, just not being so presumptuous because what you love may not be what they love. And that's okay.
Yeah, great. Well, this was really cool and interesting, and I learned some things I didn't know about your journey.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
know aren't you doing a bunch of other things to celebrate your 10 years? Do you want to share with folks the kinds of
Uh,
things, what else they can get from you?
yes, we got a lot going on. The biggest thing I would say now is to run out and check out the Golden Years 10 business lessons from 10 years. Go check that out because that really does kind of crystallize what I wish I had known earlier on in 10 lessons. And we set it up as a virtual classroom because obviously, if you're an entrepreneur or a aspiring entrepreneur, you don't have time to sit in a synchronous class. So we set it up asynchronously for you to go in, read your blog lesson. You get a whole list of action items, plus a video with me giving even more explanation on each one. So go check that one out. And this is coming later on because the actual anniversary date is August 16th.
Okay, okay.
And and so with that, on August 16th, all of our 10 anniversary lectures are going to go live. And I am so excited about the 10 lectures, just because they're the brains that I admire in this work, that they're the thought leaders in other areas. And Lisa, you know how this goes. A lot of people think that, oh, well, you do DEI, so everybody does the same thing. It
No.
is a huge tent
Mm-hmm.
with, there you go, huge tent with different doors and different
Yeah.
entryways. So someone might be looking at health equity, obviously with the DEI lens, or culinary with a DEI lens, or education, K through
Mm-hmm.
12, research, etc. And so it was a great opportunity to bring together some big brains to think about DEI from these various perspectives, in ways that you and I get to talk about every single week, these certain perspectives. But to me, it's like this primer, especially for people that have wanted to do DEI full time, but they didn't know where to start generally, and they had no clue that this was a specialty in that
Mm-hmm.
area. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about that later on in the summer. But for now, the golden years, 10 business lessons in 10 years is really what will get people to take off quickly and do not suffer like I did through 10 years trying to figure this stuff out. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, great. Well, this was awesome. Thank you so much for being a guinea pig here and letting me pick your brain and
Yes.
ask you these unplanned questions. So that's a wrap for this
Yes.
week. So do you want to talk us out, lead us out with your end of episode
Absolutely.
spiel?
Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. So, y'all know what we talk about every single week. Please make sure that you go out to our website, unfazedpodcast.com. Email us at info@unfazedpodcast.com. Make sure you check out all the old and the new shows. Ever so often, we diverge from our usual script, like today, but usually we have two great phases that we want you to listen in on. If you like this week's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share with your friends, coworkers. Like, you might have a coworker that's trying to get out, like I was, and so they want to become an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Share this podcast with them, or anybody else in this phase of your life. So back to the normal schedule next week, right?
Yep. Yep.